You have pictured it. The white coat, the counter with your name on the sign above it, a town that knows you and a product people need, whether the economy is expanding or collapsing. It is the one business that cannot go out of fashion because nobody has ever decided to stop being sick. The average independent pharmacy in the United States sold $5,411,000 of product in 2024. It kept, on a typical prescription, about $2.60, and it did not find out what it would be paid for that prescription until weeks after the patient had already walked out the door. That last part is not an accounting quirk. It is the whole business. But start where you would start, because the fantasy is real. There are 18,960 independent community pharmacies left in the country. Together, they are about 36% of every retail pharmacy in America, and no single chain has more locations than all the independents combined. The National Community Pharmacists Association put the market at $103 billion in 2024. This is not a dying trade. It is a large, essential, functioning industry that is disappearing at a rate of roughly one store per day. So what does one cost? There is no public database of pharmacy sale prices, which is the first thing you learn when you go looking. What exists are the multiples appraisers and brokers apply. Peak Business Valuation puts independent pharmacy transactions between 2.45 and 3.38 times sellers' discretionary earnings. Another common approach prices the store at 15 to 30% of annual prescription revenue, which on an average volume pharmacy lands between $810,000 and $1.6 million. Call it $1 million for a store doing $5 million in sales. You will not pay that in cash. You will finance it, almost certainly through the Small Business Administration's 7A program. And since June of 2025, the SBA's operating procedure has required a minimum equity injection of 10% of total project cost on any complete change of ownership. On a $1 million deal, that is $100,000 of your own money at closing. The same rule closed the door most buyers used to walk through. A seller note now counts toward that 10% only if it sits on full standby, no principal and no interest, for the entire life of the loan. Then come the licenses, and the numbers get almost comically small. A DEA registration for a retail pharmacy, the federal permission to touch a controlled substance at all, costs $888 for 3 years, non-refundable even if the application is denied. A state pharmacist license runs on the order of $110 to apply and $110 a year to keep. The regulatory permission to operate this business costs less than a used refrigerator. The expensive part was never the paperwork. So what is the expensive part? The person legally required to stand behind the counter. The Bureau of Labor Statistics put the median annual wage for a pharmacist at $137,480 as of May 2024. A pharmacy technician's median was $43,460. You need a pharmacist on duty during every hour the doors are open and realistically 2 technicians beside them. That is $224,400 in wages before a single benefit, before rent, before insurance, before the first dollar of debt service on the million you borrowed. Then there is the inventory, which behaves unlike almost any other retail stock. 84% of the prescriptions and independent fills are generic. 52% are paid for by Medicare Part D or Medicaid, which means more than half your revenue arrives from government programs whose rates you do not negotiate. You buy the drug at market price, you carry it on your shelf, you hand it to a patient, and then you wait to be told what it was worth. Which raises the question the entire business turns on. What does one prescription actually earn? The average independent filled 67,601 prescriptions in 2024. That is roughly 217 a day, every day. The average charge on one of them was $76.21, down from $80.37 the year before. The association's most recently published gross profit margin was 19.7%, which it described as the lowest point in its 10-year look-back. 19.7% of $76 is about $15, and there is nowhere else in the store to make it up. Nearly 96% of an independent pharmacy's sales come from prescriptions. The greeting cards and the reading glasses and the heating pads by the door are not a second business. They are decoration on the front of a dispensing operation. In 2024, the association recorded a 10-year high in the cost of goods and a 10-year low in gross profit in the same year. Costs at a record, margin at a record low, in a store where 96% of the money comes from one activity. $15 a prescription sounds workable until you price the act of dispensing it. In 2020, a national cost of dispensing study conducted by the accounting firm Myers and Stauffer for the pharmacy trade associations measured what it actually costs a store to put a prescription in a bag and hand it across a counter. The answer, using 2018 data, was $12.40, up from $10.55 in 2014. That figure is now 7 years old, and wages have moved one direction since, so treat it as a floor rather than a current cost. $15 in, $12.40 out, $2.61. $2.61 against $224,400 of salary means roughly 86,000 prescriptions a year to cover 3 people. That is 235 a day. The average store fills 217. You are 18 prescriptions a day short of paying your staff, and you have not yet paid the landlord, the insurer, the software vendor, the wholesaler's finance charge, or the bank holding the note on the purchase. None of those costs consults the prescription count. The lights burn for the same 12 hours, whether 217 people come in or 90 do. None of that is the twist. The twist is that you do not set the price. The pharmacy benefit manager does, and it does so after the sale has already happened. In a state Medicaid program, the professional dispensing fee is set publicly from $8.96 in Rhode Island up to $12.46 in North Dakota. In commercial contracts written by benefit managers, that same fee is commonly between 50 cents and $1.50 per claim. Same act, same pharmacist, same bag, roughly 1/20th of the compensation. It goes past a thin fee. In a January 2025 survey, the Pharmacists' own association filed with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. A survey of its own members, with all the self-selection that implies, 40.8% of respondents said they had been paid below the federal benchmark for what the drug cost them on more than 40% of their Medicare Part D prescriptions. Nearly 30% said it happened on half or more. Selling a product for less than you paid for it is not a margin problem. It is a different category of problem. The obvious answer is volume. Fill more. The arithmetic says otherwise. At $2.61 of contribution, one additional prescription per day earns you about $950 across a full year. To cover a single pharmacist's median salary, you would need 52,674 additional prescriptions annually. That is 144 more per day, on top of the 217 you already fill, through the same counter with the same staff. There is no version of this store that fills 361 prescriptions a day. So where does the money go? In July 2024, the Federal Trade Commission published an interim staff report built on compulsory orders issued to the 6 largest pharmacy benefit managers. It found that the top 3 processed close to 80% of the roughly 6.6 billion prescriptions dispensed in the United States in 2023, and the top 6 processed more than 90%. All 6 of them operate their own mail order or specialty pharmacies. The company setting your reimbursement owns your competitor. A second commission report 6 months later measured what that arrangement produced. On specialty generic drugs alone, pharmacies affiliated with the 3 largest benefit managers took in more than $7.3 billion, above the estimated cost of acquiring those drugs between 2017 and 2022. An audit by the Ohio Auditor of State found benefit managers had charged that state's Medicaid program a spread of more than 31% on generics inside a single year, about $208 million above what the pharmacies filling those prescriptions were paid. So what happens to the stores that cannot absorb it? A study published in Health Affairs by researchers at the USC Schaefer Center found that 29.4% of retail pharmacies operating between 2010 and 2020 had closed by 2021. The independent count has gone from 19,432 in June 2023 to 18,984 a year later, to 18,960 by July 2025. In that same January 2025 survey, 30.3% of owners said they were considering closing, and 80.3% said their financial health had declined over the prior year. And when you go to sell, the market prices the business accordingly. 2.45 to 3.38 times discretionary earnings puts independent pharmacy near the bottom of the owner-operator transaction tables, below car washes, below home services, below nearly anything with revenue a buyer can forecast. This one cannot be forecast because the price of the product is not yours to know. There is exactly one kind of owner this works for, someone who already holds the pharmacist license so that $137,000 salary becomes income instead of expense. Someone who owns the building so the rent is a payment to themselves. Someone in a town with no chain inside 20 miles, running long-term care and compounding and immunizations, the revenue lines build outside the prescription claim and therefore outside the benefit manager's reach. It destroys everyone else, and most completely the buyer who borrowed $1 million against a margin a third party can revise at will. So picture the counter again, the white coat, your name on the sign, the town that knows you. All of it is real and all of it is yours, and every one of those 217 prescriptions a day is priced by a company that has never set foot in the building and owns the pharmacy your patients could be using instead.